Scott, beautiful, beautiful house. What an amazing spot to look out here and see. You guys live in a really blessed place. My name's Phil Lyman, and I'm running for Congress in the newly reconfigured CD3, which is roughly 60% of the state of Utah. It goes from Wyoming to Arizona and Colorado to Nevada on the south end. Very, very large. And if you take the upper Colorado River Basin and you lay it over the top of Utah, it matches CD3 almost exactly. There's very little that are not in the same spot, which is a beautiful thing when we're looking at the water and the resources and things that come along with the upper Colorado River Basin. It's right up my alley in my neck of the woods. I'm a CPA down in Lyman, Utah. Grew up in this little community that looks very much like it did when I was a child, which is a blessing and it's kind of rare. But I grew up around cattlemen and miners. Uranium is always very important to us. My wife's side of the family were miners and cattlemen, and my side were businessmen and entrepreneurs. And my dad was a CPA, and I took over his business kind of accidentally. I was going to school at BYU. I was planning to go do an MBA, so he had an opportunity, and I went down for an internship right out of BYU. I was 26 years old, and I worked for him for about a year, and was getting ready to head off to my MBA program, and he had a heart attack and died. He was young, and I was really young, but I was a BYU graduate, so there's nothing I couldn't do, in my mind. And I took over the CPA firm, and it's been a huge blessing to me. And I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. There was, shortly after that, I was, had a few employees, and it was a small business, and it's a little town, wondering, how do I get out of land and actually do something important, and worrying about paying employees and the bills and different things. And I woke up one morning, and it was just like a 2 to the back of the head, and my thought was, Phil, you're a good accountant, and there are a lot of people all around you who could really use a good accountant. Stop worrying about how to make money and go help these people. And I did. I have a woman that she was trying to do a diabetes control project for the Navajos. The Navajos have a predisposition to diabetes, and she was an eccentric, girl down there. She was from Wisconsin, and she's living down there on the reservation. People kind of made fun of her because she was not from around there, and kind of a do-gooder. And I called up Nettie Pratt was her name. I called up Nettie and I said, "Hey, you and I talked about this once. Have you got some time? I'd like to come and help, if I can help." So I went down, and I was thinking, I'm gonna help her with her books. I'm gonna help her get her nonprofit off the ground. Well, she explained a 638 contract, which is a way to go straight to Congress and bypass the Indian Health Services and contract directly with Congress for the money to take care of Native Americans. And we put that together. We call it the Diabetes Control Project. And as soon as we got that done, I said, could this not be done for a clinic? Could we not set this up as a clinic? And she was like, well, maybe we could. So we went to work and we created what we called Utah Navajo Health Systems, which is now the biggest employer in the whole Four Corners area. It's a nonprofit. I have no ownership of it, but I do have 2 kids that work there, and it employs about 700 people. It brings jobs. Healthcare in that area was almost non-existent, and now it's just an amazing transformation. At the same time, I had another client who had a little scenic air business, and he started doing some ambulance flights. And I said, "Have you looked into servicing the Navajo Reservation?" Because of the 638 contract, wasn't philanthropy on that part. It was like, hey, there's government contracts that could really change your business. He had a son. He wanted to sell the business. I had a few people that were coming to buy it. And I called up his son, who was doing his MBA at BYU, and I said, "Look, Joe, I know you want to go do amazing things. Your dad's got this business. He wants you to buy it. If you come back to Blanding, I will help you. I will help you run this business and turn it into a global business. Africa, Hawaii, Alaska, He was buying up businesses all over the place and doing an amazing service with the air ambulance business. Sold it a couple of years ago for just under $1 billion, which is a lot of money. But for me, it was just a testimony or a testament that if you stop worrying about how can I make a living versus how can I help, you start to see things happen. Another thing, which is kind of along the same lines, and I don't like bragging, or I always think, don't give a resume, but another individual who, the Navajo down there, Mark Maryboy, very prominent on the Navajo Council, a very liberal Democrat. He was a friend of mine, and he came in one day. I called him up and I said, look, Utah Navajo Development Council needs to wrap up. They need to go away, but I can't do it without a CEO. Would you mind being an interim CEO so we can wrap this thing up and put it to bed forever? And he said, well, rather than wrap it up and put it to bed, let's go after the water settlement for the Navajo Nation, because there was a $276 million proposed water settlement and 86,000 acre feet for the Navajos, again, for the Utah Navajos. And so we started doing that. I went to work, we went to Washington, D.C., we did a few things, and ended up getting this water settlement. Mitt Romney takes full credit for it, but it started with Mark Maryboy. I went down to the big ceremony we had at Lyman Valley, and lots of people speaking, lots of things going on. And I went up to Mark and I said, Mark, you and I both know who made this happen. And he said, it's okay, it doesn't matter who gets credit. The important thing is that we got the water settlement. And it was really a beautiful thing. It's a great thing. So that's a little bit of like maybe an insight as to what drives me and motivates me. I've got 5 kids, and we just had our number 20 grandkid. My kids are competitive, so they like to, nobody wants to get left out of the mix, so they keep having kids. And my wife Jody, if she was here, she always makes a really great impression. She's tending some grandkids in Blanding. So I ran for county commission in San Juan County, and I was motivated by some bad policy that hurt people. I watched it happen. And I thought this shouldn't happen. The federal government shouldn't do this to good people. And I watched that happen. I ran for county commission. My first assignment was on a uranium board, and it was over on the Arizona Strip because President Obama had just gotten into office in 2009, and there was a proposed moratorium on uranium. Sorry, don't let me bore you if any of this. So we went over to Fredonia. We're meeting for about 10 months with these uranium companies, trying to figure out, okay, what compromise can we strike with Sally Jewell and the Obama administration, and save the uranium industry that's really important to that part of the world. And having lunch one day with some of the executives that were there, they said, we're not coming to these meetings anymore because we sold our company. I said, you sold your company? They said, yeah, we sold our company to Russia, and Hillary Clinton brokered the deal. And I'm waiting for the punchline. It's uranium war. And these were the executives. Mm-hmm. We found out that's exactly what happened. They sold the uranium company, and Frank Justra, a Canadian financier, was going all over the world with Bill Clinton, brokering deals because Vladimir Putin wanted to control the uranium industry in the world. And they were doing it. Frank Justra made $1 billion profit on that deal, and he gave $125 million to the Clinton Foundation. A few months later, in rolls the federal government to shut down my county and declare a national monument, Bears National Monument, because they needed to protect the artifacts. Well, I knew what this was about. This was not about the artifacts. It was about the rare earth minerals. It was about the oil and gas. It was about the uranium. And so you get into those fights and you get prosecuted. I got prosecuted by the federal government, purely political. Mm-hmm. But through the whole process, through the prosecution, actually spent a little bit of time in jail, which is an experience that I wouldn't trade. I don't want to do it again, but I wouldn't trade it. But when I talk about weaponization of the BLM or of the, which is Bureau of Land Management, not Black Lives Matter. When I talk about weaponization of the IRS, when I talk about weaponization of the Department of Justice, it's not abstract for me. It's things that I've observed and tried to work on specifically. After my ordeal with the Department of Justice, my rep in the legislature called me one day and said, I'm not planning to run again. you should maybe consider it. And I did for too long, because I didn't really want to do it. But finally I felt like I needed to run for the legislature, and I did, and was elected very easily in my district for the state house. And I like to say, I believe I'm the only state rep in the country who took office with their parole officer. When I left the legislature, I said, look, I know I was a firebrand. I know some of you think I was a little bit radical, but I showed up here with a parole officer. You got to cut me some slack. I didn't come here in the same direction that some of you did. Anyway, now running for Congress. I guess my interests remain the same. I want good policy. And Federalist number 10, James Madison, talks a lot about what makes a republic work, and it's not unity. He said democracies are as short in their life as they are violent in their death. And why are they violent in their death? Is because somebody gets control of that democracy and they start to enforce what they think is a better idea. And they do that through regulation, through surveillance, and through coercion, and they have violent deaths. People don't like to be told what to do. Madison talked a lot about negative rights. The right to be left alone, the right to live your life the way you want, the right to mow your lawn in any direction you want. And those things are under attack. We feel it. Thomas Jefferson said, I would much prefer the inconveniences of too much liberty to the problems of too little liberty. And there are inconveniences that come with freedom. If Mike wants to do something and I want to do something different and our interests conflict, we may have a problem. He might have a dog that barks and I'm not happy about that. That's an inconvenience of freedom. And if we go and say, well, let's pass a regulation, let's do this, pretty soon we have a regulation state, and it's a real problem. From a congressional standpoint, the obligation from my perspective is to have government that stays in its lane. The federal government has important delegated responsibilities. And if they would stay in their lane and stick to those things, they would be better off. But what they do in Utah especially is they start telling us how to do our education, how to do our health care, how to do our housing. They dictate our energy, they dictate our water, they dictate the access to the forests. I thought it was ironic when a couple of weeks ago that President Trump committed $1 billion to save the Great Salt Lake. And I was telling some people yesterday, I said, it's not the Great Salt Lake that we're trying to save, it's Lake Bonneville. This is just what's left of that dying lake. Mm-hmm. I don't know that you're going to save it. There's more evaporation coming off the Great Salt Lake than if they took all of Salt Lake's water and put it straight into there. So it's going to take a much more creative solution than buying up all the farmers' rights. You hear the narrative that it's the alfalfa farmers. They're the ones that are using all the water. They use 80% of the water. Well, they use 80% of the captured water, which is 4% of the water that falls. So you could double the water that we put into our pipelines and our reservoirs, and still only be using about 8%, which is a lot when you think about trying to deal with these things. Healthy forests produce 20% more water than unhealthy forests. And why do we have unhealthy forests? Because we are restricted from going on and doing the things that a state would do if they had jurisdiction over their forests. And the ironic thing, and this is, when I got into the legislature, someone said, are you in favor of transfer of public lands? And by that they mean transferring title to the state. And it's a hotly, debated topic, and I'm a hard right-winger, so I think that you should transfer. And I said, that happened. That was 1896. Remember? That's what that shape on the map means. We're Utah. It's jurisdiction, which is more important than ownership. And in my perspective, I like living in a public land state. I like being able to hunt. I don't want it to turn into Texas where you can't get out on the land. And what we have is a federalist solution to that, where the federal government has title. The state of Utah can't sell it if they want to because they don't have the title. But Utah has jurisdiction. The federal government can't overmanage our land in Utah because it's inside Utah. For that system to work, you need, number one, a federal government who respects the state, and you need a state who's willing to push back, even fight, if it comes to a fight, to say, this is our jurisdiction. Same thing with the Department of Education. Why do we have a federal Department of Education? That isn't, there's no purpose in that. That's a state function. Let's see. The reasons why I feel like I would make a good congressperson is because I am a representative. Congress is a really special body. You've got the bicameral legislature, the Senate that represents the states historically, and the House, which is the people. You want to send a representative that represents the people. I know Celeste. I like Celeste Malloy. I worked with her as a county commissioner. I worked with her in the legislature. She was a staffer for Chris Stewart, and a good staffer. But her mindset is very much the administrative beltway mentality of Washington, D.C., and she understands it, and they understand her, and that's the mindset that controls, from my observation, if I had a criticism, it's that mindset that controls Celeste. She's going to be working more to promote the beltway mentality than to fight against it, and I think this district needs somebody who will stand up and push back against that apparatus. Be a representative of Utah, not a professional administrative person in Washington. Okay, that's kind of a now. I will say this: I met with the young Republicans last night, the college Republicans. Kai Schwimmer, I don't know if you pay attention. Kai Schwimmer is really dynamic. Nick Shirley was there. Nick Shirley's the one that is just shaking things up. And I said, Alexander Schultz and Easton said, one person telling the truth can bring down the tyranny, and Nick Shirley is evidence of that. He's like destroying these networks of Somalian daycare centers. And how's he doing it?
Leering centers.
What's that?
Leering centers.
Yes, leering centers. And how's he do it? He pulls out his phone and he takes a video and tells the truth, and it's like, wow, it's just like earth shattering. So I was talking to them, and I said, the movie probably before all of them were born, but Remember the Titans. Some of you would probably remember that movie. Coach Boone, a black coach, integrated into a white school. The school board's there, they're trying to intimidate him, trying to tell him, this is how we do it here, and this is not going to. And I love what Coach Boone said. He said, I don't scratch my head unless it itches, I don't dance unless I hear music, and I will not be intimidated by you. Do you remember this? And it's just like, oh man, that's a guy with principle. It's a guy that probably would never get into politics. And if he did, he probably wouldn't last long in politics. But that's the kind of person that you would want in politics, is somebody who just says, I will not be cowed into a position that I don't believe in. Alexander Schultz needs it again. Live not by lies. Don't go along with things that you don't agree with. Don't compromise when it'd be better to advocate your position. I'll jump to questions. I'm probably about done, right?
Yeah, very good. Questions?